Hello, hello, hello. This is Adelai Brown, your heart coach, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the HeartLine with Adelai Brown. I am so excited about today's show because we have an amazing guest here today. One of the things that you know that we do here on the HeartLine in our Heart Tribe, we grow heart equity, personal, relational, and financial wealth that we obtain through authentic living. That's a big deal. And we really focus on doing that, right? We understand that we have to be honest and open and enlightened and authentic. Which will revitalize our lives and transform our lives. And that's why the heart is such a big deal for us. And I thought that having today's guest fits completely into the message and the mission that we are on with growing heart equity because we have a financial expert here today, right? So I'm really excited about everything because I feel like she ties it all in into when we're talking about growing wealth, she's really doing it and helping others do the same. So we're going to jump right in, and I want to take this time to welcome our guest, Miss Elcorese Brown. She's an accountant, an entrepreneur, and just an overall amazing human being. And you don't have to take my word for it. You're going to find out about it as you listen to this conversation. So, welcome, Elcorese. Thank you so much for being here.
Hello, Adelaide. Thank you so much for having me. I count it an honor to be able to come into your space and just share my heart and share things that wisdom has taught me with yourself and your audience. Thank you.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much. And I know you will. The thing that I love about you, just to give our audience a backdrop, I met El Carice, I would say about 7, 8 months ago, like around November, December. I went back and looked at it before we got on today, and I got connected with her because of her profession. And so we got connected working with a local nonprofit here. And El Carice really helps entrepreneurs, business owners, and just individuals not only understand their finances but learn how to use their finances to truly grow wealth, right? Like no, and not just money. She really understands mission and purpose and why God may give us a business or give us a call on our lives that will lead us into business ownership, entrepreneurship, nonprofit world, what have you. But we need people like El Carista to teach us how to manage and be good stewards over what God has called us to do. So we met professionally with me just trying to get my finances together, right?
Right.
So what I really wanted to get into today was one, if you could just give us a little bit about you and what got you into becoming a financial advisor and just doing all the amazing things that you do. What got you into it and like why? What's your why?
Okay. So I every job that I ever had in every year of my life, I was always dealing with the money, the cash register, the daily sales report, things like that. I could have been at the Marshalls and they would pick me to ask me if I would want to, work at the cash office or something like that. And so just along the way, it came natural. Then it became a game because I'd work at some offices and my role would be a certain area of accounting. And, when you're sitting in the office all day, you and your colleagues are just kind of like having your day's work and things like that. And when you're at the end of it and you're trying to like, run the numbers and things like that. So it kind of turned into calculator games. So, just along the way, I had the epiphany of what would happen if I went to school for this. And so, a few years passed before I actually went to school for accounting, but I was in college. I didn't have a specific major. I knew I liked business. I knew I liked how businesses, just operated and the different components. So I started out in business management and evolved eventually into accounting. And then I spent, about 10 years working in banks. And in banking is where I found like I didn't really get to utilize those skill sets. However, I saw a major need amongst the business owners. They had a great idea, they had a product or they had a service or something that they kicked off because they knew it would be something that would help humanity. They could make money and they knew they wanted to go forward. The hiccups were coming when it came down to the financial management of the business.
Okay.
Oftentimes, some of the business owners would, they'd get this great contract, $1 million comes in the door, and they didn't have here's what you need to do in order to receive those revenues in the proper way. Or maybe they bought something that I probably didn't need that right now. And sometimes what that does is that hangs up the money because you put it someplace where it wasn't really a necessity. But then that big contract comes through, and I always use the term this analogy, you need an excavator. Well, you're not
Mm-hmm.
going to just drive out and go and purchase one because that's a big piece of equipment that you're not going to use every day. An excavator could cost you $250,000. You only need one for 2 weeks, so you're going to rent it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you didn't put that money away in preparation for the next big job, you may not be able to take it because you didn't have your resources in order to get the supplies and the tools that you needed.
Okay.
And so these were things that I saw happening and along the way, or the company's doing great and an investor wants to buy into their company, but this investor is really a savvy business company and they want
Mm-hmm.
to see the numbers. And the numbers is where it all is starting to come down.
Mm-hmm.
They know what they're looking for on these reports, where they know this guy might be a pretty good deal to get on board with. But if you have no reports, you have no record keeping, you're stuck again. And so how do you move forward? If you're not I'll say expert at finances, you definitely need to get someone who actually is. And I know it's probably going to cost some money. However, it's going to save you money down the road because you'll have all of your expenses accounted for that you could write off on your taxes, or you would be able to make a decision based on what those numbers are saying, whether should I continue to sell this product or service? Is it a waste of my resources to even have it as a part of my service offering? But you won't know that until you're looking at the numbers, and the numbers pretty much tell the story. So that's how I got into it, is seeing business owners come into the branch, sitting down with me. They want to put in a loan application, whatever the financial need is at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And in the discussion, I'm finding they're not realizing their income. They have invoices out there that nobody's collecting on, just all the things that are a part of the financial running of the business, and that's
Mm-hmm.
the part that they weren't good at, or they didn't want to ask for their payment. Sometimes they'd do a job and they'd send an invoice and the customer 30, 60, 90 days in hadn't paid it.
Mm-hmm.
Why hadn't they paid it? Well, you never asked them to pay the invoice. They figure, who knows what they're figuring, but
Mm-hmm.
they'll pay it when they get around to it. But if they don't see the urgency from your end, then it's
Mm-hmm.
not a big deal. And so now you have money out, like how they'll say you have money out in the streets. However,
Mm-hmm.
it's not in your bank account because you
Yes.
didn't say, hey, your payment's
Pay
due,
me. Yeah.
the things of that nature. And so just in seeing that, seeing the angst that the business owners were experiencing, and it's not one particular business or another. I mean, I've had even attorneys that I've helped with
That was going to
whole
be my
thing.
question. Was
Yeah.
it a certain type of business? Did you notice all of that? It's so much. I'm gonna let you keep talking. Go ahead,
No,
and
you're
then I'll
fine.
get my questions in.
Yeah. Well, it was different industries that I have come into contact with. I've been fortunate enough to work with just about every industry, whether it's service or trades or manufacturing, legal, things like that, health and wellness, medical. It just varies.
Mm-hmm.
And what that comes down to is that, yes, I can do these things, but I don't have either the time, the bandwidth, or the full understanding on the proper way to manage my records in order for me to see the results that I'm looking for. And that does take a certain amount of training. Some individuals may think, well, it's just basic math. Well, there's more to it than basic math.
Mm-hmm.
There's analysis that comes along with after that basic math. That's what accounting is. Like bookkeeping is just, making sure we have all the data. But the accounting piece of it is the analysis of the data to be able to say, oh, okay, all right, this now I should do this, but I shouldn't do that. And then alongside that, there's also the personal side. You know, many of us have had financial losses one way or the other. It just
Mm-hmm.
depends on the situation or the person.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that moves into when you've made a mistake in your finances. I'll say finances is a very intimate thing. You don't really feel the courage to open that up to just anyone,
Yes.
especially if you
Yes.
had made a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of misjudge a situation, or maybe, you didn't set yourself up right for the future, and then you
Mm-hmm.
see, that's trouble. Or maybe you had a life change, someone might have got a divorce, that changed my financial picture.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of get insecure about it, you know, or maybe, God forbid, your credit got a little messed up because the thing happened or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You have to find your way to trusting yourself again and just rebuilding the discipline that it's going to take to overcome those challenges. And then also along with that, you want to get advice, um, just so that you can feel confident in making those moves again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that was really good. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's amazing how your story progressed. And I want to highlight that because we talk about growing heart equity, personal, relational, and financial wealth through authentic living. And even you detailing how you grew into your craft and your expertise, it's like you said, it started off fun, calculator games, right? I thought that that was something to think about because I think many of us think that whatever we're called to, whatever God is, whatever direction we're being led into, a lot of times I think people think it's something they have to go out and like make happen, which
Mhm.
I'm finding a lot of times the thing that we're most called to. A lot of times is something that just comes so natural to us. A lot like what you just described with how you got into accounting, right? Now, you said some really heavy things in the sense of just how it progressed and you got to the bank and you realize it's not just any type of business owner. A lot of business owners are struggling with management and how to be able to grow and scale or even just healthily manage and maintain their business. Would you say because I'm always talking about heart issues and just how we experience life and why we need to manage our emotions and why we need to be emotionally regulated and why we need to confront these fears. In your experience, would you say that heart issues really impact how people are able to manage and maintain their finances?
Yes. I say yes because when you're having some challenges in life, some people's vice is to spend.
Mm.
Some people feel like if I buy one more course or one more, not one more thing, it's going to change my life. It's going to make me better. But that it can, but now you're building up an arsenal or a toolbox of items that you kind of opened the first page, but you didn't really dig into it. So you're not your emotions or your the just the things that you are going through. If you're and you, everyone's not this person, but oftentimes I run into where the person is like, well, just buy it. And then you're not building the wealth that you're really anticipating. And I think that's a little bit different from investing. There are investments that, you can work on and build, and that can help you build your wealth. But
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we go to shopping as an outlet to make us feel good or feel confident about just kind of put that problem away for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
But we can't always keep doing that because now we're not building that financial security that we so desire.
Mm-hmm.
It does take some discipline,
Mm-hmm.
and you can do it with small steps. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
people sometimes are looking like, well, if I can put away half of my paycheck, everyone's not there yet. So
And
you
that's
have
a
to,
lot.
yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And you have to start somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
I'll speak on an individual who was married
Mm-hmm.
and things weren't working out. Well, here comes the divorce.
Mm-hmm.
Now, along that lines, the individual didn't wasn't prepared for the separation financially. Essentially, this individual had to walk away with without the retirement benefits, without uh the parts of the savings that would have belonged to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just like had to leave. So now, what happens now if you're realizing that you're starting your entire life over? What do I do? Well, you save a little at a time.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a certain goal, maybe you want to take up maybe a part-time, something part-time and works toward that goal. So say you had a credit card, some credit card debt,
Mm-hmm.
and then you got life things happening, but you still want to, go forward.
Mm-hmm.
It might be worth it to get a second income and just for that debt. So you
Just
can
to
knock that
devote it
out.
to that debt, right?
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can knock
Yeah.
that out in a timely manner, and you're not really impacting your regular living wage,
Yeah. Yeah.
or and that's just a way to just kind of look toward the future and starting over.
To do something different,
Yeah.
right?
Or even
So,
if you, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead. Finish your thought. I was going to
I was
ask you a
just going to
question,
say,
but
even if you don't have that same situation, everybody needs to be putting something away all the time. When
mm-hmm.
if you get $100, you figure something in that $100 that you're going to put away.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes we'll take our bonuses and we're like, yeah, I'm going to go on a cruise. Okay, nothing wrong with that. However,
Still put something
put
aside.
something away,
Mm-hmm.
always put
Mm-hmm.
something away because those little bits add up over time. And then you want to put it in a vehicle that's going to work for you. Like this, when you're putting your money to work, a lot of times we just drop our money into a savings account. Well, that's nice. However, you want to think about maxing out your return when you're looking at things like that, because most savings accounts, it's really the bare bones basic 1 penny a month in interest.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to put your mind towards something that's going to, if the money is just going to be sitting there, something that's going to be earning a higher interest at least.
Mm-hmm.
Or you want to put it into something that's going to, where you can invest it, where it's
Mm-hmm.
going to, you know, grow more. That's going to take probably a little bit of research, a little bit of maybe guidance because everyone isn't a savvy investor, but
Mm-hmm.
you don't always have to be, but you can kind of do a little research and just see where you can begin to start building. And then
Yes.
when you see that that's working, then you hone in on that and really build upon that. You had a
So
question?
it's funny that you say that because my niece, I talked to one of my nieces actually yesterday or day before yesterday, and she was calling me because she has some money that's been in a savings account and she wants to put it in a high interest yielding account or a CD. She was trying to figure out which one, right? So I told her to research it. I told her to research the interest rates that are out there and in comparison to the two, and what are the benefits? What are the penalties? Let's say you really needed the money and had to withdraw it. Which one would cost you the most if that was to happen? And I was really proud of her because I said it's nice to have money saved, but it's really not smart. And we're not taught that. A lot of that we're not taught. You have to find out um hit or miss on the fly or out there like doing research. So when you say doing something that will a vehicle that could kind of make your money work for you, are those something like what you're talking about? And I know there are other things, but would those two things be something like what you're talking about?
Yes. So I'll give you an example. I had a couple bucks laying around, but I wasn't really getting any interest on it. And I had a an old 401k from from Fidelity, right? And so I knew that Fidelity offered brokerage accounts. I knew that they offered investment accounts and things like that. So when I go to looking at what the rates were, even if I had sat my cash in this regular old investment account, not doing anything with it, it gained more interest than a savings account. I
Mm-hmm.
believe the last time I looked, which was a couple weeks back, it was like 2.19%. You're not getting that at your bank.
Not a bit.
If
Not a bit.
you had put it into a brokerage account, which is an account that you would want to use to invest from time to time, even if it's just sitting there, you never invested nothing, you just put that money in there, it is 2.97, which is almost 3%.
Mm-hmm.
It's certainly better than just leaving it sitting
Leaving it in the
in the
savings
savings
or
account.
literally putting it in a mattress under the bed, right?
Right, right. And then if you say, I wonder if I could buy some stock or something like that, that's what that account is for. And you can decide by your research, what you want to invest in. And you don't have to take your whole paycheck. You can do 25 bucks at a time because this account is still gaining interest. But when you're ready to invest, there's a certain amount that is needed in order to invest. So I'll give you an
Mm-hmm.
example, like a minimum of $1,000.
Mm-hmm.
Do that.
Yes.
So maybe you
Yes.
started out with $600 in there. It's still earning pretty good interest, and you
Mm-hmm.
adding 25 bucks a pay period or a week or whatever. When you
That's
get
gonna
to
add
a
up fast.
thousand,
Yeah.
yeah, when you get to 1,000, you can decide if you want to invest in something, you
Yes.
know? And then that's what putting your money to work for you is to begin to build wealth. So people can build wealth by when they get a tax return, they don't have to spend the whole thing. They can just like put it in their brokerage account or put something in their brokerage account
When
or
you say a
stock for
brokerage
stock.
account, just for
Mhm.
the sake of the conversation, what type of brokerage account is this? Would this be through a bank? Would this be through like some other financial institution? How would somebody, if they're hearing this and they're like, what's a brokerage account? What does that look like?
So all of the banks likely have an option,
Mm-hmm.
a brokerage account option.
Okay.
Some of the rules would vary as far as minimum balances and things like that.
Okay. Good.
However, there are banks out there, like, for example, I mentioned Fidelity or
Mm-hmm.
T. Rowe Price or something like that, where you can begin to ask questions about what is required for me to have a brokerage account?
Okay.
Generally, it's just logging in and deciding which type of account that you want. The good thing about it is there are, representatives that can kind of help you understand what your goals are
Mm-hmm.
and what account might be best for you at the time. So say you're a business owner
Mm-hmm.
and you don't really have a retirement set up because you're running things.
Mm-hmm.
This would be a perfect opportunity for you to set up a
Set up a
retirement account of
brokerage.
sorts. You
God.
can
And
set
this
up
would
maybe,
be the indirect way, and I've told many business owners this. You working for yourself, you can still provide yourself the same benefits that an employer would. You just
yes.
have to be strategic about setting it up. And this was one of the things I was talking about. It's almost like setting up your own retirement accounts. But I
Mhm.
didn't have the language like our financial expert does. So keep going, keep going.
No
I just
problem, no
wanted to
problem.
kind of bring that
Yeah,
in so people can
yeah.
really understand what, because people think this, I feel like what we're talking about, a lot of people hear this and think, oh, people with money do that. I don't do that. People who know what they're doing do that. But I feel like what you're doing right now is bringing it down to earth and
Mhm.
getting people to trust themselves with their
Yeah,
finances, right? So go
yeah,
ahead. I just wanted to
yeah. No,
say
no,
that.
you're fine. Yeah, a lot of people, maybe millionaires who you never even know because they're not wearing their wealth so that you can look and say, oh, this person drives a Lamborghini. I know they got a lot of money.
Yes.
Yeah, no, they're wearing khaki pants, a blue shirt, shopping at the Goodwill. It's discipline and it's having that goal in mind because
Mm,
I love nice things. I love to look nice. However, you got to be strategic with everything. There should be a balance, between when you're going to go on vacation or when you're going to splurge. I always think it's good to just sort of, that's where putting a little money aside is for, that way you're not interrupting your regularly scheduled program. You've been preparing for this. You've been
mm-hmm.
preparing to go to Mexico, or you've been preparing to take your spouse to a nice dinner or weekend away.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like if you do that discipline, you can really, that's when you can see you can have whatever you want. You know, we see all these flashy things, but we don't know what that person had to do to get there. We just see all these flashy things. And then we're like, man, I wish I could buy this new Jaguar, or I wish I could, go on these vacations that I'm seeing on social media. It's
Mm-hmm.
just a process of preparing for that, you know? And if you're always putting something away, you're building that wealth and you're creating now choices for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and the ability to say, you know what, I can do this because I know in the back of my mind I had been preparing for this for the last 1 year, 3 years, 5 years. You
Mm-hmm.
know, when you see
Yeah.
people, there are people who buy cars cash, and
Yeah.
that's because they knew that they at some point would desire that or whatnot, and then they started putting that money away 5, 7 years ago, and now they're riding past in this new car that you're like, man, that's nice. They've been working
Mm-hmm.
on that a while, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I say, before we, envy the situation, maybe take a look at the journey
Mm-hmm.
that it took to get there.
Yes, I heard somebody
No one
say,
says, how did you get rich? They just are like, wow, they're
oh,
rich kids.
yeah, you got it. It's like, yeah, the grass is greener on the other side, but they also have a higher light bill and water bill to make sure that grass is there and to nourish what they need to nourish to activate and make sure to get. And are you willing to pay that? You over here complaining about your water bill with your dry grass.
Right.
So I just listening to you, and I hope that our audience is hearing this. For me, I think it's so encouraging because there is that, you know mom or dad that's working hard and may find themselves at the end of 2 weeks and maybe with nothing left in the check, or maybe they have something left, but they don't think it's enough to do something with.
Hmm.
And that business owner that we know, a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners, especially early on, it's a lot of sink or swim, right? And it's like, but when you're swimming, put this aside
Yeah.
because you might not sink as bad if you are thinking ahead and believing enough in yourself. I think, and you tell me what you think. I believe this is just my, because I'm always thinking about the heart issue, and I feel this. I really believe that a lot of people struggle with saving and prepping because so many people are in like survivor mode and fight or flight. So if I'm in survival mode, it's hard for me to go back and look at what I've done. It's hard for me to put something aside. I'm not thinking ahead like things are going to be better. I'm always expecting ambush. I'm always expecting um sink or swim, right? So if I'm one of those people who's always expecting the bottom to fall out, or always feel like life is so chaotic and so hectic and they never have time or never have enough money to do anything, then the justification is I can't save because I never have enough anyway.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about that?
Pay yourself first.
Thi- okay.
And I'm not saying pay yourself an entire your salary, but you want to, I'll give an example, a percentage of your
This is so
income.
funny because I was going to ask you about a percent. You can't see it because of where my
Yeah,
camera is.
it's
Go
okay.
ahead, but I have some
So,
percentages I was going to ask you about. Go ahead. This is
so
so
for
good.
those of us who are believers, most
Mm-hmm.
people tithe.
Mm-hmm.
They tithe their 10% to the church or they donate or whatever. That saying, you can utilize that as a guideline to pay yourself first. So if you brought home $1,000, your 10% to yourself would be the $100 every paycheck. The rest, whatever, but this has to go there, you know? And if you're somebody who, let's say you got paid 100, you got paid every week, just knowing that you took out $100, you have $5,200 at the end of every year to put.
Mm, that's a big number.
Mhm.
That sounds real
Out of
good.
$100 a week. That's just basing it off of
Mm-hmm.
52 weeks a year.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you're doing it every 2 weeks, that's $2,600 a year. You could take your husband on vacation or your wife somewhere, or now you can do something for the birthday or the anniversary that is really meaningful and genuine and not last minute because let me see if I can scratch up $200 to buy some flowers, you know? Um, and you can also take those monies and you can invest it or whatever.
The
It's just,
brokerage account you just talked
yeah.
about.
Yeah, but it's definitely pay yourself first. And even if you have to start off small, you
Mm-hmm.
know, you can progress.
Mm-hmm.
You make that commitment of whatever that number is that you feel like I can manage this much. If it's
Mm-hmm.
$12, if it's $20, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And when you see that you can keep that part up and you may have an extra or you may have a bonus or whatever, then add to that. I'm not saying you got to put the whole thing in there. Maybe you decide whatever that number is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And what'll be happening is as you're seeing that money growing, you begin to want to save more because you look back and you're like, wow, you can
Mm-hmm.
even set something up where when you get your paycheck, a part of it automatically sent off somewhere.
Yes, I used to do that when
That
I worked
brokerage
in the
account or
office.
whatever.
Yeah.
That way you don't even see it coming out, you know? And maybe your commitment to yourself is I'm not even going to look at it except for January, April, September, December. I'm not going to be looking at
Quarterly.
it every
Got
week
it.
because that's going to
Yes.
make me want to buy or do something.
Yes.
And even if there's some type of, oh, something happened, Sometimes you don't even have to pull from that. You might have to say, well, that's going to have to wait. The discipline, that's going to have to wait till my next pay period. If it's not like I'm without lights or I'm without whatever, if the bottom hadn't dropped out, it gotta wait.
Mm. I love that because you mentioned earlier about shopping, right? And I do think that that's a issue that a lot of people have and something people do emotionally with money. And I think a lot of our audience may struggle with, and you just used a great example. I think that we have family members, friends, children, spouses, significant others who come with these emergencies that we feel responsible for fixing.
Yes.
And I feel like that ties into a lot of the survival mode. I remember one time I had a business coach call me out because I was canceling meetings because we have sessions scheduled. I'm invested in this, but my mom got an emergency every time I'm getting ready to meet with her. And I'm not even realizing that I'm in this toxic cycle with my mom until the coach calls me out and was like, no, we're not rescheduling. I mean, or I'm not just, this just going to be a cancellation because your mother can figure that out. And sometimes you're like touching your pearls, like, what's she playing
Mhm.
with? That's my mama. But then
Mhm.
her thing was, how will you ever grow? If every time you're getting ready to do something, you got to stop what you're doing to go and save and rescue your mama. And see, that hit me because it was true. And I found that every time it was time to level up in my business or my life, personally, relationally, financially, I would constantly self-sabotage. And it always dealt with my husband, my mama, my kids. I had somebody got sick in school, so I got to cancel this meeting. It's like it's justifiable things. But when I really started doing the hard work, I realized, wow, this is a very um cunning form of self-sabotage. But
Mhm.
it looks like support. It looks like being responsible. It looks like being in community. But I didn't have boundaries.
Yeah, you're
I
there for everyone else except yourself.
There you go. And so I feel like sometimes we talk about shopping that could go over um easy to, oh, you don't need no more shoes. But what about back to school? What if your child don't need seven pants and seven shirts right now? To your point, because you do need to caught up and get some debt down. What if we start off with three and three? Because we got a washer and dryer and we
Mhm.
could manage that for now, or maybe swallow my pride and go to a couple uniform drives because I can get free uniforms if I just go stand in the line for a little while.
Mhm.
Not to minimize it, but thinking out of the box, right?
Yeah, ways that you can help yourself and your family without the financial burden because
Yes,
of the programs and the options that are out there. And you can also say your children will understand or they will have to understand. Honey, we got a few things that we're working on this pay period this year, whatever. So this time I'm gonna get you X. And then we're gonna work the rest in throughout the year. They if they don't understand, they will learn to understand. And then
yes.
you're also teaching them that there might be times when it's not available. So I
Hmm.
have to be wise with what we have.
Yes.
And that's
And,
also, yeah, contributing to that. Go ahead.
and it might be times where that's not necessary.
Mhm.
I think a lot of times we do it, and I know I've been guilty of this, and I've worked hard at it, but I was guilty of it. I think sometimes we get caught up in trying to give people what we didn't have, our children, our spouses, but even our friends. Like sometimes we want to give of others because we want them to understand that that's what we want back. We don't
Mhm.
say it, but
Right.
it's like a unspoken expectation. And
Mhm.
I think that in my experience, I feel like what highlights this the most is usually something with finances.
Mhm.
It's almost always something with money that will highlight a problem going on, an issue that's happening, and that's why I think what you're talking about is so important because even you highlighting starting small. right? Having those percentages, paying yourself first. It goes back to breaking out of these toxic cycles. That's establishing boundaries. That is developing a discipline. And we need to do all of that if we're going to grow wealth.
Yeah, it's literally digging yourself out of the grave
That's good.
because you're buried in all of this emotional and financial and credit and all the things, and you want to be financially free. You need a
Mm,
plan, you need to gain some discipline, and then you get to work, execute, you know. And that's in pretty much every area of our lives, whether it's business, it's family. And we have to learn how to say no. Saying no is important because we may have someone who we helped financially in the past because, they had a hard time, they whatever happened. But if you study the history of it, they begin to rely on your contribution as their way of living. You were starting out being a help out, but now you're a hand, you're just always there. Now you are regularly paying a percentage of whatever the thing is that they need. Like you might get that call, I'm short on my electric bill about $70. Can you help me out? Well, if you go back to the history, you're paying that shortage, they pay you back, but you're paying that shortage every time to try to keep them out of trouble instead of saying, hey, why don't you, maybe put like $12, $5 in a savings somewhere or a jar, whatever,
mm-hmm,
as your rainy day fund. So
mm-hmm,
when this thing comes up, you're paying, you're borrowing it from yourself. You have it
mm-hmm,
now because you've been kind of
mm-hmm,
putting $7 away. I was just playing with my calculator. I do that sometimes. And I like to use the analogy about coffee. Uh, I know many people who will go out and get coffee pretty much every morning,
mm-hmm,
but that's almost $2,000 a year if you
mm-hmm,
walk into the place and buy the coffee every day for 5 days. $1,820. Well, how can I combat that? Like you have to plan.
mm-hmm.
Well, I have to be at work at 7. Set your coffee pot to go ahead and brew.
Okay.
So
You see me drinking this coffee I make at
everything,
home.
everything is already there. Because $1,800, that's a trip to the Bahamas
Okay.
for one
Okay.
person.
A nice one too.
I mean, at least 3 or 4 days.
Okay.
But I'm just utilizing that as what could I have done with that coffee money?
And
And it's
yes.
that, so I'm saying basically small changes. If you
Yes.
spend $5 to $7 a day, you could, if you put that in that little jar or whatever, and the electric bill comes and you short, you got plenty in there to take that $70 and make sure you got your bill
Mm,
covered.
hold up. So I can fund myself when I'm short on something. I can put myself in position to not have to call somebody else.
Yes.
Wow. That and I could do that fairly quickly if I just lock in and start developing that discipline,
Yeah.
huh?
Yeah. And I don't want to call anybody lazy, but it's just planning.
Mm-hmm.
It's planning.
Mm-hmm.
I have a Keurig because I don't brew a whole pot.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to buy the little containers, the little box of those containers.
Mm-hmm.
And that had 18, I'll say. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then the container price was like maybe 15, $17.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm spending that twice a month because I may drink 2 cups of coffee, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's 30 something dollars.
Yeah.
Less than what I would spend at the coffee shop. However, think about it. What if I got that little container that's refillable? It's $5.99. I know I'm throwing like small numbers, but
No, I love it. No, because
this is
this is
where it
the
make the difference.
yes, yes,
So if
yes.
you bought that little Keurig disposable, dump the coffee grounds out, rinse it out, and prep it for the next day. You buy yourself a tub of Folgers for $11. That coffee is going to last you the whole month. So you just
Okay.
count. I just cut my coffee cost in half
Yes.
from $30 to $11. That 5.99 little gadget thingy, that's gonna go as long as it works. I can just keep using that. So that's just like one fixed cost. But as far as my variable cost, I buy this bucket of Folgers. It only take me like maybe two little teaspoons, to get that little thing in there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you're drinking coffee. If you're a once a day person, that coffee can take you all the way through the month. Now,
Mm-hmm.
creamer, sugar, all that, I'm not focusing on that part. That's up to the
Mm-hmm.
individual. But I wanted to
Yeah.
kind of like hone in on a way to visualize where your money is going and see
Mm-hmm.
how you can kind of wrangle all that back in.
Mm-hmm.
I go here for this and I go there for that. I eat breakfast out or whatever. And the number seems small when you're out there spending it, but if you had coffee and a croissant and spent like $13 every day,
Every day. That's a
it's
lot when it adds up. And listen, this is why I wanted you on, because I feel like you did a wonderful job of, and trust me, first I want to know, will you come back to speak with us more about our
sure,
finances and
sure.
trusting ourselves again? Because I feel like you've done such a great job of highlighting the need and kind of zeroing in, because you've tapped into, I know our audience, you've stepped on some toes, and there's a lot of ouch and amen in this show.
Mhm,
And I hope people are encouraged like I am, because you just gave a very specific example of how you develop a discipline to be able to set aside that 10% or whatever it is you
mhm,
decide in how you want to grow yourself. Just in how you just broke down going from spending 35, 40, $50 a month on coffee and getting it down to like 10, $11 a month. And just tangibly how that looks and what that can look like. You also highlighted literally it wasn't doing it all at one time. It was, okay, I did that. Now let me try this. But in
mhm.
the process, we're developing a discipline. And
Right.
I'm all about, let's talk about it, but okay, how do we apply this? And I feel like you've done a great job of that. And I hope that you all heard that and see why I wanted Elcorese on here, because she, I feel like you just demystify accounting. You talked about depreciation, fixed and variable costs. You did all of that just now in a
Mhm.
very realistic um way that we can understand. So what
Right.
I want us to do is, one, I thank you for saying that you will come back. But as
Sure.
we get ready to wind this out, please let the people know how they can get connected with you as far as working with you, following with you. Just let them know what some of your handles are, or how they can get in touch with you.
Sure, certainly. So, my website is www.charisbusinesssolutions.com. That's the name of my company, Charis Business Solutions. You can find me on Instagram at Bookkeeping with Elcorese, and also on Facebook, it's Charis Business Solutions. And you may come across you may see me on TikTok a little, but not very much. That's kind of just my little place to have fun.
What's your TikTok handle? Because people like TikTok.
This is Elcorese. Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Mhm.
Y'all gotta follow her.
Yeah.
Y'all
So
gotta follow her every place she
mhm.
is. So make sure y'all go follow her. Is there anything that you would like to share with our audience before we get ready to close out? Though they can connect with you, is there anything you'd like to say in regards to our finances and our heart and just dealing with it all?
I think all of it is fixable.
Mm, so good.
All of it is fixable, and we just start with the first step. So we get a plan and we want to execute. I think that's most important. It's just get that plan and execute because it is fixable. It may take time, and no one sometimes, not being patient might be your downfall. But in this case, this is how you legally, confidently, and patiently begin to build yourself back up, build up your finances. Yeah.
Mm. Thank you so much. Oh my
Mhm.
gosh, this just did my heart so good. Just in what I'm navigating and learning about finances. I just thank you for being here. I thank you for taking the time. You are such a community resource and just a pillar and in what is possible with us when it comes to our finances. And I just want to thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your expertise. And I thank you for being willing to come back because we just scratched the surface. I know it's so many other things that we can and will talk about, but I just thank you for being who you are and allowing those calculator games,
Mhm.
in your early years to get you to a space where you are really helping us grow wealth in a very, like you said, legal, authentic, but enjoyable way. So I just
Right.
appreciate you, sis. I thank you so much. Y'all make sure to go look up Charis Business Solutions. Find Elcorese. We will definitely have her contact information in the description so that you can, go there and easily get to her. And get your finances together. Business owners, professionals, you're making the money, but you just don't seem, you don't see where it's going. This is a person that can help you. We invest in all these other things. You probably give Chick-fil-A way more money than you need to. No slight to Chick-fil-A, but let's get our finances in order,
Yeah, they're
y'all.
doing their job.
Okay, right? Okay. So let's get our finances in order, and we will be back with another amazing episode of the Heartline with Adelai Brown. Because remember, when you heal your heart, you transform your life and you transform the world. I love y'all. Have a wonderful day. See you next time.